Most humans who have ever lived could not drink a glass of milk. Not wouldn't, couldn't. Their bodies would rebel within the hour. And yet milk became one of the most valuable foods in human history anyway. If you can drink a glass of milk right now without your stomach turning on you, that's not the normal human condition. That's actually unusual, and it says something specific about where your ancestors lived. Most adult mammals on Earth, including most humans who have ever been born, lose the ability to digest milk once they stop nursing. So why did ancient people build entire economies around a food most of them couldn't properly digest? Stay with this because the answer is written directly into your DNA. Every mammal is born with an enzyme called lactase, which breaks down the sugar in milk so a baby can digest it. In the wild, that enzyme almost always shuts off after weaning. Once you're eating solid food, milk isn't part of the plan anymore. That shutoff is the default setting for nearly every mammal species on the planet, humans included. Then, around 10,000 years ago, something changed. Communities in the Fertile Crescent started keeping goats, sheep, and cattle. And once you're herding animals, someone eventually tries drinking what comes out of them. Archaeologist Richard Evershed studied the residue left inside ancient pottery from Anatolia and southeastern Europe. Using chemical analysis of fat traces baked into the clay, he found dairy residue dating back more than 7,000 years. People were processing milk that early, but almost none of them would have been able to digest it properly. Their lactase had already shut off, the same as it does in nearly every other adult mammal. Picture an early farmer milking a goat at dawn, warm milk hissing into a clay bowl. That farmer lifts the bowl and drinks it straight down, the same instinct you might have looking at a fresh glass today. For most adults in that village, that decision ended with cramping and a miserable few hours. Milk should have been a dead end. Instead, people found a workaround, and it had nothing to do with their bodies changing yet. They changed the milk instead. Left to sit, milk ferments. Bacteria break down much of the milk sugar before it ever reaches a human stomach. The result is yogurt and eventually cheese, foods where most of the difficult sugar has already been consumed by microbes instead of digested by a person. A food that used to cause misery became something entire villages could eat safely. For thousands of years, that was the entire solution. Not evolution, fermentation. Culture solved the problem before biology ever caught up. But biology was paying attention. In populations that kept herding animals generation after generation, a rare genetic mutation appeared, one that kept the lactase enzyme switched on into adulthood instead of shutting it off. For a population with reliable access to fresh milk, that mutation was suddenly a massive advantage. Milk is packed with calories, protein, and fluid, exactly the resource that matters most during a drought or a hard winter. Geneticist Mark Thomas has studied how fast this mutation spread through ancient European populations, and the numbers are startling. It became one of the strongest signals of natural selection found anywhere in the human genome. People who could drink milk directly, no fermenting required, simply out-survived and out-reproduced the people who couldn't. The strangest part is that Europe wasn't the only place this happened. Geneticist Sarah Tishkoff studied cattle herding populations in East Africa and found adult milk drinkers there too, but their DNA showed a completely different mutation, one that evolved independently, arriving at the exact same result through a separate accident of biology. Two unrelated populations, thousands of miles apart, both stumbling onto their own private fix. If a glass of milk has ever made your stomach turn on you, you're not broken, and you're not unusual by any historical measure. You're running the original human program, the same one nearly every person who ever lived was born with. The people who can drink milk easily are the genetic exception, not you. Here's the twist that proves this happened after dairying started, not before. Biologist Joachim Berger examined ancient DNA from Neolithic farming skeletons, roughly 8,000 years old, from communities we already know were milking animals based on residue found in their pottery. Almost none of those skeletons carried the mutation for adult milk digestion. These were people actively drinking, processing, and depending on dairy as a food source, while their own bodies still couldn't fully handle raw milk without discomfort. The behavior came first, passed down through culture. The biology caught up thousands of years later, passed down through genes. If you want to know which other normal foods your body was never actually built to handle, subscribe to Neanderthink. That gap between behavior and biology never fully closed. It just split the world in two. In regions with the longest histories of dairy farming, mainly Northern Europe and a handful of pastoralist societies in Africa, the mutation became common enough that more than 9 in 10 adults today can drink milk with no issue. In large parts of East Asia, West Africa, and indigenous communities in the Americas, the ancestral shutoff never went anywhere. It's still the default setting, running exactly the way it ran before dairying ever existed. Worldwide, researchers estimate somewhere around 2 out of every 3 adults on the planet can't fully digest milk. That means the version of the human body that struggles with dairy isn't the disorder, it's the majority, and the ancestral baseline most of humanity still walks around with today. This also explains why cheese and yogurt spread into far more cultures than fresh milk drinking ever did, long before refrigeration existed. Fermented dairy didn't require anyone's body to have evolved anything new. It worked for everyone, which is exactly why it became the more universal food, while raw milk stayed tied to wherever that one rare mutation had taken hold. So the next time dairy doesn't sit right with you, there's no ancestral failure hiding in that reaction. Your body is doing exactly what a mammal's body has done for millions of years. The surprising outcome was never intolerance. The outcome that actually needs explaining is the small slice of humanity that can drink a glass of milk at all, and the specific, traceable history of drought and animal herding that made that possible. Most humans who have ever lived could not drink a glass of milk. If you can do it without a second thought, that's not normal. That's a genetic anomaly, 10,000 years in the making, built by drought, hunger, and a handful of ancient farmers who got lucky at exactly the right time.